Hello, it's great to be with you again today. Happy Monday motivation. Today we're talking about repression. When your mind protects you from pain, that's what we're talking about today. So, have you ever had a reaction to something and wondered, where did that come from? Well, I have. I think we all have. Maybe someone said something relatively harmless, but you immediately felt defensive or hurt. Maybe a particular situation created anxiety and made it seem much bigger than what was truly happening in the moment. Or maybe someone asked you about a period of your life, a season when, things weren't so easy. And you realize that parts of it felt strangely distant or difficult to remember. If we haven't met before, my name is Terri Sterk. I create transformational spaces where women, wellness seekers, step into their own power, turning their pain into purpose and their survival into thriving. Today, I want to talk about an often misunderstood concept in emotional healing, repression. Repression is sometimes confused with suppression, but they are not the same thing. Understanding the difference can help us become more curious about our emotional responses and less judgmental toward ourselves and others. Suppression is conscious, which means you know something is bothering you, but you intentionally decide not to think about it right now. Perhaps you've received some upsetting news just before an important event. You make a conscious decision to put those emotions aside temporarily so you can function. Suppression is a conscious effort to put disturbing thoughts or experiences out of your mind, or control the expression of difficult feelings. Repression is different. In classic psychological theory, repression is considered an unconscious defense mechanism. Something distressing is kept outside of your conscious awareness. That's one reason repression can be difficult to understand. By definition, if something is outside your conscious awareness, you can't simply look inside yourself and recognize it. So why would our minds do this? Think for a moment about everything your mind does to protect you. It's amazing. When you sense danger, your body responds before you've had time to analyze what is truly happening. Your heart rate may increase, your muscles may tighten, your breathing may change. Your attention becomes focused on whatever appears threatening. Our minds and bodies have remarkable protective systems. Psychological defenses can also serve protective purposes. These purposes can help us manage emotions, conflicts, or experiences that feel overwhelming. Our minds are made to help us get through these difficult situations. So being aware of it can help us heal. It doesn't necessarily mean something is wrong with you. It means human beings have ways of adapting when something becomes difficult to handle. And sometimes those adaptations, they're what help us during a season of life where it's difficult to handle. But then years later, we don't need that adaptation anymore. Kind of like when we talk about being in survivor mode during the event and then healing to get to thriver mode. Not everything we forget is repression. The distinction is very important. Human memory isn't a video recorder. We forget things for all kinds of reasons. Maybe time passes, we don't pay attention to every detail. Stress can affect our memory. A very stressful season, that can stop us from remembering every detail about what happened to us. Memories can change as they're recalled and reconstructed over time. And forgetting something does not automatically mean you've repressed it. This is especially important when we talk about trauma. People may remember traumatic experiences very clearly. They may remember only portions rather than the whole experience. Their memories may change or become clearer over time. Some may have difficulty remembering certain experiences. It really crosses all thresholds because it depends on the person and it depends on the experience too. Memory can also be influenced by suggestion. That's why I don't encourage anyone to go searching for some hidden traumatic memory unless you have some professional assistance doing that. Simply because something in your life doesn't make sense is not a reason to go digging to try to figure that out. You don't need to manufacture explanation for your pain, and you don't need to force a memory to appear. I'm not a trained psychologist or medical doctor. I'm just here to help us recognize when things happen in our lives and how we can help ourselves get through those points in time. First of all, pay attention to the present. Instead of asking, what terrible thing must I have forgotten? I think the healthier question is, what am I experiencing right now? I may not understand it, but what is it that I'm experiencing? Perhaps you've become extremely anxious during a conflict. Perhaps criticism makes you feel as though you've completely failed. Perhaps you constantly feel responsible for keeping everyone around you happy. You're a people pleaser. Or perhaps you have difficulty resting because somewhere and sometime you learn that productivity equals self-worth. We don't have to immediately explain every response. I'm only trying to say that we can become curious about why we're responding a certain way, even though we might not fully understand where that feeling is coming from. I've learned through my own healing journey that curiosity can be much more helpful than judgment. Instead of saying, why am I like this? Try asking yourself, what might this reaction be trying to tell me at this point in time? The small change can create space between the reaction and your response to a situation. Your body gives great information. Our bodies can also show us clues about what we're experiencing emotionally. Maybe you notice your shoulders tightening up during a particular conversation. Your stomach feels unsettled around certain people. Your jaw clenches when you feel criticized. Or your breathing becomes shallow when conflict begins. Your body is telling you to pay attention. Something feels important here. And instead of immediately trying to eliminate that anxious feeling, we can learn to stay present with ourselves. Take a slow breath. Feel your feet against the floor so you feel grounded. Look around the room and remind yourself where you are at this moment. I'm safe. I'm in my home. I'm safe. I'm in my car. Wherever you happen to be. Ask yourself, is this a familiar feeling or am I unsafe? Have I felt this way before? This distinction can be powerful. It helps you determine, is this something new or is it familiar? Healing doesn't require us to remember everything that happened to us. One of the most hopeful things I want you to hear today is this. You don't have to remember every detail of your situation or your circumstance to begin healing. Healing is simply learning that you don't have to live today according to rules that you learned during your difficult season. So don't force the past. If memories surface naturally, particularly memories that are upsetting or confusing, consider just sitting with them and feeling that emotion. I know I felt this way when I first began rereading my journals to write my first book, Thrive After Breast Cancer. I was triggered by the stories I read that I had forgotten. Excuse me. I was triggered by stories that I read that I had forgotten, or stories that I had repressed. I'm not sure, but the fact they were written down made them real. I tracked my breast cancer journey, both of them, in minute detail, so I knew they were true. My goal wasn't to construct a new story. My goal was healing from those stories and using them to help other people. So over time, I became quite comfortable discussing my past traumas, and I was able to write the book to help a lot of women. Repression and other psychological defenses remind us that we're human and that we're remarkably adaptive. We develop ways of getting through difficult circumstances. Some of those ways may have protected us when we needed them to. But healing allows us to ask whether we still need them. Maybe silence protected you at some point where you just didn't speak when you were agitated or conflicted. But today, perhaps you're learning to use your voice, to be stronger when you have something to say. That's particularly important when we're advocating for our own medical care. Maybe pleasing everyone kept relationships peaceful, but now you're learning about healthy boundaries. Maybe staying constantly busy prevented difficult emotions from surfacing. I've talked to women who tell me that when I ask them, how do you handle stress? By staying constantly busy. Well, that will cover up the stress, but it won't heal the stress. Being constantly busy helps prevent difficult emotions from surfacing. But now you're learning that resting is safe. Creating a boundary around yourself when you need rest is important. Maybe avoiding difficult conversations once felt necessary, but today perhaps you're learning how to communicate honestly and respectfully. Healing doesn't mean condemning the person you used to be. It means recognizing what helped you survive and deciding what will help you thrive. Here's something to practice for this week. I'd like you to give it a try. When you notice a strong emotional reaction to anything, don't immediately try to explain it or defend yourself. Just pause. Take a breath. Then ask these three questions. What am I feeling? Name that emotion that you feel. Is it anger? Is it anxiety? Then ask yourself, what am I noticing in my body? How does it make me feel? Am I tense or heavy? Do I have a racing heart? Tight shoulders? Shallow breathing? Am I present or am I just constantly on the move and nervous? But if you stop and pause, then you can slow yourself down and ask yourself the third question. What do I need right now? What do I need? What is this emotion telling me? Maybe you need a boundary. Maybe you just need some time alone. Or maybe you need rest. Maybe you're very exhausted or overwhelmed and you just need time to breathe and settle. Or maybe you need reassurance from someone you love, reassurance that you're going to be okay. Maybe you need to talk to someone you trust. Or maybe you simply just need a few minutes to settle and reset before responding calmly and respectfully. Emotions will come and go. Learning about ourselves when they happen is healing. You're learning to listen to yourself in the present moment instead of being dictated by a traumatic season in the past. That's healing. Our minds sometimes protect us in ways we don't completely understand. But your story is to move forward. Our story isn't over. We don't have to understand every mechanism of yesterday's trauma before we can make healthier choices today. We don't have to understand why it happened. We don't even have to understand all the details around it. Your past experiences matter, but healing is also about deciding what happens next. What is important today? What did I learn from that past experience so that I can move forward and thrive? So become curious. Pay attention to those emotions. Seek support when you need it, and keep taking the next healthy step forward. You may discover that the question isn't always, what am I repressing? sometimes a better question is, what is my life showing me that needs care today? Thank you for joining me today. As always, I'm cheering you on.